Cornelius Byrd Young. I'm sorry, I'm talking about my son. He's named for his uncle, Neil Young, or Cornelius Zane. What was his name? I'm all mixed
Cornelius Zane.
No. Cornelius Byrd doesn't say. I thought it was Zane, but
it is.
Okay. Cornelius Zane Byrd was the son of George Frank Byrd and his wife, Julia, and he grew up in the area of Sanford, Virginia. His earlier days were spent down at at one of the seafaring areas between Sanford and Saxes, and as that land became lower, they moved up to Sanford, where his father had a large general store and acted as a banker, and it was a very busy family, a large family. And his brother, during World War II, there were 3 boys that were in the service. The older, which was Orville Byrd, and he was in the Navy. The second was Cornelius, or Neil, who was in the Army, a graduate of West Point, who served and was sent to the Philippines prior to the war. He took his family with him. No, he was taking his family with him and his young son, Zane, and asked if my husband, Frank, could go along. He had recently lost his father, and his sister and Neil were brother and sister. And so Frank's mother said he could go to the Philippines with them because they thought that Zane could use a playmate, that maybe Frank needed a change. However, when they got to California, his mother said, "I can't let him go to the Philippines. You'll have to bring him home." So Neil had to take a train. They had driven cross country, take a train, take Frank back to his mother, and then they went on to the Philippines. I believe his wife and son went with him. But when the war broke out, they were sent back to the States. Neil, of course, remained. He was under MacArthur and Wainwright. I think he was second under Wainwright, but somewhere in that connection. And when MacArthur left, Neil was remaining in the Philippines. He was sent on the Bataan Death March, survived that, made it to Japan, was in a prison camp, and what the Japanese did was put the officers in the rice paddies and let them work and gave them meager food, and most of them died of malnutrition or different diseases. And Uncle Neil, unfortunately, was one of the ones that did not make it. He was used to being in charge, and I'm sure he was probably not as respectful of the Japanese as he should have been, and I think he got a lot of bad treatment. And he's buried in Arlington, at the Arlington Cemetery. He had one son, Zane Byrd, and there are no other offsprings. His widow has long since died. She lived in California. He was an outstanding young man, and I understand that he was very well thought of all up and down the shore and the people that he met along the way. He started out at W&L, but his father was able to get him commissioned to West Point, and of course the expense was much less. And after having several children and to educate, which Mr. Byrd did do, he was happy to have it picked up by the Army. But Uncle Neil loved the Army and was going to stay with them all of his life. Unfortunately, the life ended pretty soon. That's his mother and father. She was Julia, and he's George Frank. And that's as he got older and he was in a wheelchair. He did not learn of Neil's death until after he died. He didn't learn of it. He never knew that Neil had died. The other 2 sons came back, the younger son and Orville, and both of those had been serving in the Navy, and they survived the war.
I would have never noticed that if you hadn't pointed that out.
I didn't think you would. Nobody would expect it to happen. And his name is on the gate up there where they have for the veterans. It's at VMI.
And he was there before
That
West
was where
Point.
he went for his first year.
So this is Neil's mother, and her name?
Julia Mears Byrd.
Wow. Say it again. This post office is
Sanford, Virginia.
Okay.
And that's Warner Young in front of it. Or Frank Young. Frank Young. And I guess it was probably the post office that Neil knew as he was growing up. After they moved from down to the creek, I forgot where it was.
Isn't that a great photo?